Good morning and welcome back to PSA TV. This is Eye on Labor with me, Christy Galising. And on set, I've got with me a retiree, former member, former worker of the NCRHA, Mr. Keith Baily. Good morning to you, sir.
Pleasant good morning to you and to the wider viewing audience of this electronic media.
How are you this morning?
I'm thanking God for the gift of life and continuing to abide on the enrichment and trusting God that we all, as a wider citizenry, would be able to accomplish our objective as required, and which ought to be destined by the responsible authorities in which resides under our management.
Very, very interesting response. They're very eloquent as well.
Thank you very much.
If I could just ask you, you were employed at it's Mount Hope Hospital?
Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex.
Right. What did you do there?
I worked at the administrative department for a period. I started there in 1991, and I retired as of October 17, 2017, where I fulfill responsibilities both from a manipulative perspective into administrative. I also served in the capacity as chairman of the PSA staff side for a period of over a decade, representing the wider interests and the affairs of the membership's requirements.
And how has your time at Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex been?
It has been an excellent attribute. There were times that you felt quite downtrodden based on based on the level of certain behavioral patterns in which have been demonstrated, such as the uncaring administrative process in which dictate the lives and well-being of those in authority in their discharge, and which have left employees, even up to present, in a very, very dismembered state, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically.
When you compare then to now, would you say the system has improved over time? The healthcare system, that is.
When I started at the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex, it was a private institution.
Right.
Thereafter, a couple of years thereafter, one of our former prime ministers, the late Mr. Patrick Manning, upon having his triple bypass in Cuba and returned home, it was in 1997 or 1998, where the institution was made public, where our citizenry was able to attain medical services, some of the medical services, free of charge. Unfortunately, at the time of its implementation, proper infrastructure was not put in place. So it created a chaotic display.
Yeah.
There continued to be a further demonstration of such ill effect, even up to present. Yes, you are coming to the institution, you are having services, but when you take into consideration you have a shortage of human resource, poor equipment, you have patients, outpatients in whom have to wait until 2020, 2021 to attain services at the said institution regarding the status of our health operations. And I do not think that as a people, such is a requirement that needs to be met. Much better needs to be done by our respective principal directors, such as the Minister of Health, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and present Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, regarding the proper refurbishing and restructuring of our managerial system within the RHAs, because the RHAs have proven to be a total failure many years back in Europe, and we have took it as a lollipop and run with it, and it has demonstrated its ugly sore. It has become worse than a fourth stage cancer, that going on to the operating table, there's no cure. And if it continues, sad to state, if it continues in this derailing fashion, you would find no further improvement unless it is treated, and treated in the manner most forcibly.
And how do you think it can be treated?
Such has to be realized by the revisitation of your structural management.
Okay.
And regardless of which political directorate is at the helm, and get away from the political doggies. That because of my party is in power, I am appointed to a senior administrative position, or I am appointed as CEO. And at the end of it all, you does not fit the basic requirements in terms of knowledge, skill, and expertise to execute in the fashion most desirable. And this is what is creating one of the major downfalls within our system today.
When you look at the health sector, it has gotten its share of blows. It continues to get bashed. Lack of beds, lack of manpower, like you rightly said. When you were there, what were some of the challenges you faced?
There were many challenges in which incurred. As I indicated, when we were a private institution, yes, we were not established at such a large scale. Mm-hmm. But coming into fully public, what happens is that when you take into consideration the area in which the zonal location of the NCRHA in comparison to Northwest, mm-hmm, we have a wider patient coverage.
Yes.
And in so doing, what happens is that we do not have the relevant facilitation to accommodate any excessive overflowing of patients at the respective unit for in-housing. So sometimes you find patients come to the institution and are treated at the accident and emergency department. And instead of being able to kept overnight for further management, they has to be discharged, and to expect a further management to be undertaken via your clinical process. But getting into the clinic is a next lengthy process.
Yes.
It takes you a period of about 6 to 8 weeks before your correspondence are screened, then to get an appointment based on the nature of your affliction before being summoned, mm-hmm, to see a doctor. So that during that period of time, any mode of demise can be realized on behalf of the patient. How do you comfort a patient whom comes to an institution and indicate, and receive an appointment for July of 2020?
Yeah.
Is that patient has the affordability of meeting private care? And if such is the purpose and facilitation of our extensive public service, not only Mount Hope, mm-hmm, but in general, is to provide proper and efficient care to the well-being of our citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago and the wider environs.
I know we were just talking about the ophthalmology department, mm-hmm, in terms of the services that they provide, and you were telling me that you think it should be upgraded and be a little more effective.
I fully endorse. Services are in general, throughout the length and breadth of the health sector, should be elevated in terms of the administering of care to the peoples of Trinidad and Tobago. Again, as you stress emphatically upon ophthalmology, why is it that when a patient comes to be seen at the respective faculty, and based on the relevant procedural measures in which would be requested by the attending physician, that patient has to resort to towards external services by mode of getting these procedures accomplished, then to return to the said institution in an effort to be assessed and evaluated. So then what is the purpose? The purpose becomes null and void. So when these parliamentarians get into their high horses, or get into the parliament chambers and espouse that they are doing this and they are doing that and they are doing the other, at the end of the day, when you get down to the groundwork of it, is that what little are being realized. I'm not disputing the fact that there isn't good prevailing, but there needs to be a lot more towards the interest and well-being of our peoples. And if that cannot be accomplished, it becomes foolhardy. We have a Minister of Health who I call as a theatrical puppet. I make no apologies about it.
Why did you say that?
No, I'm not disrespecting his office. I respect gratefully his office. But at the end of the day, you find him and many others whom have sat in. What has they done? Look at the state and condition of Port of Spain General Hospital. Thank God that a situation did not evolve worse regarding that post-tremor in which we had. Look at the condition. That central block has been totally evacuated. There's no mode of proper facilitation to accommodate patients in whom are afflicted. You has to be of some critical nature to be admitted for any medium to long-term period. Otherwise than that, you will have to be treated
privately.
Not privately. If you choose to, you would have to be treated at post-care, post-management care, which was through your clinical management, and it leaves much to be desired. And one of the key factors is that those in authority, and I'm not only referring to the politician, in general, especially within health administration, need to possess that passion for human caring. And if such does not
that is a very interesting point, because
if you does not seek to possess such, it's not just the mere sake of fulfilling a responsibility of a job. It's a service in which you are providing that towards persons in whom needs, just as each and every one of us. So if you does not possess that disciplinary value, which ought to be embedded within, it becomes like spitting in the air and allowing it to fall in your face, man.
When you look at healthcare itself, how far we've come, do you think we have a long way to go in terms of achieving a well-rounded healthcare system in this country? Or how far do you think we have to go again?
We have been able to attain tremendous, such as many services we have had, open heart surgeries being established. You have patients' kidney failure, etc., dialysis, etc. You have had services being implemented. Complement the authorities that be. But there needs to be a lot more that are required regarding the intensity and extending of advanced medical services. One of the other factors in which has to be taken into consideration is that we are quite short of medical professional resources in an advanced mode. And in so doing, why you have persons seeking upon completion of their
University
MBS,
degree.
MBBS into their postgrad, rally, and seek to qualify otherwise, there are the committed and dedicated servants, citizens, in whom would return to our country and fulfill because they are dedicated and committed. But what about the vast percentage in whom seeks to extricate and take up residency in other countries, whereupon that the services in which are being expedited could have been fulfilled at home due to the poor maladministrative practices, failure to implement proper salaries, wages and salaries to the benefit of employees, not only doctors, but nurses, general staff, throughout the length and breadth of the health sector, and that is a crippling effect. That's a crippling effect to the continuous.
Speaking of salaries, I just want to interject a bit here. Speaking of salaries, do you think that medical professionals are paid properly, or do you think they are compensated enough?
I do not believe that the authorities, quote and unquote, are fulfilling the requirements of facilitating wages and or salaries to all, not only just the health sector, but across the entire society of Trinidad and Tobago. But specifically in relation to the health sector, the medical staff, not only doctors and or nursing, but the general staff who carries out the key responsibilities of its fulfillment are not being compensated properly to meet the requirements, not only in terms of patient care, but to meet with our day-to-day living requirements.
And speaking of salaries and negotiations, now I don't know if you would have known, but yesterday we had a very disturbing occurrence where the CPO again did not come to the table with any offer, and she instead opted to storm out of negotiations. What is your take on negotiations as is, and the length of time that these workers have been waiting for what is rightfully theirs? We have some workers who have been surviving on 2013, 2011 salaries. What are your thoughts on that?
First and foremost, permit me to say, it continues to be a demonstration of a compendium of gamesmanship by the respective political directorate. I can recall that during their campaigning, even when one of our former president of the PSA, Ms. Jennifer Buttis Primus, when she came upon the political platform and indicated that all efforts would be made in an effort to have negotiations, all outstanding negotiations and continuity pursued in the most vigilant fashion. One of the key factors in which we must take into consideration, and which many people fail to accept, is that the PNM administration is anti-labor. They do not support the working class. There are clear indicators of what they had done to Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union under the late Francis Mungru, what they had done to Telco under the former Lyle Townsend, who was president of Communication Workers Union. And at the end of the day, workers continue to suffer. this is not any mode of political partisanship. When it comes to employees' bread and butter, it is clearly indicated that you must have a serious approach, because the output of labor in which are generated by the respective are not being treated with due respect. And with this administration, to be honest, the late Prime Minister, Mr. Patrick Manning, his words have not fallen on barren ground. Dr. Keith Rowley, with due respect to his office, has failed miserably as a political leader in the interest and well-being of Trinidad and Tobago. And if I see him in his face, I will tell him this. He concerns probably himself and to those his close associates. But at the end of it all, why should workers continue to suffer gravely under the hands of the respective political administration for a want of better needs? When they are sleeping comfortable at night, when they can afford to resort to Hyatt or go to Hilton or sit down within their large dining area and entertain a sumptuous meal, there are many homes today that are just entertaining bread and butter. And not even bread and butter, some even a cup of spiced tea and go to bed. Just recently, a resident of my community had to indicate to me that she did not have anything to give her 2 children to eat. And the most she could have given them was to make some soursop tea and give it to them.
Wow. And these
How
are the
heart-rending it is. And these persons, again, with due respect to the office, Dr. Keith Rowley, the Minister of Finance, the present president of the PSA, Comrade Watson Diop, I believe is doing his utmost best in seeking to set standards towards attainment of much better working conditions in relation to salaries and wages and other benefits on behalf of public officers of Trinidad and Tobago. And yet for all and sundry, for whatever unjustified cause or reason, why is this level of gamesmanship continue to be demonstrated? Clearly shows gross disdain to the workers of Trinidad and Tobago. And I firmly believe that this is the time in which workers need to separate their personality differences and rise and forget political partisanship, because you cannot go to the food stall and present a PNM or a UNC party card and expect your items to pass the cash register. They would quicker call the 999 for you, and you would have to be rearrested and taken into custody. And let us send a very strong message to the administration today that this nonsense in which continues to inculcate, we are absolutely fed up with it and we are not taking it anymore. And the only way to bring resolvency of this is that we have our local government elections upcoming, we have the general elections coming, the time has come. When you have the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago standing on a platform and indicating as long as he fulfills his mantle of responsibilities as Prime Minister, he does not care if he returns to office. It clearly identifies what's his status. And if workers have to be suffering in this condition, what more can be realized?
And I just want you to touch a little bit about the fact that there's a bill, a pension bill, which seeks to give parliamentarians and the upper heads increased pensions. As a retiree yourself, what is your opinion on that?
When I first saw the article, which was on one of the print mediums on the morning in question, The first two words came to me was that this is knowing very well that we came from the PSA came from the CPO's office just the day before. And to have that projected, it is such a grave insult to the working class of Trinidad and Tobago, and such can be deemed totally intolerable and unacceptable. Is it that this is the only classification of our society that needs increases? There are, oh Lord have mercy, there are public officers out there in whom are attaining under $1,500 a month as a pension after serving 20 odd years and more. What are the remedial measures being instituted to meet the requirements of these people who have labored assiduously towards the development and well-being of our Republic of Trinidad and Tobago? Is not only, we do not have a problem with the respective parties as identified attaining relevant benefits. They all work hard as well. But allow equality to prevail. What begins from the top must flow to the bottom. You cannot allow there are 16 ounces, and I would use this chronology. There are 16 ounces in a pound.
Yes.
And under no circumstances could a lesser measure of weight be utilized in an effort to provide an equal balance.
Very true.
And this is an unbalanced scale plate in which the SRC, between the Prime Minister and the SRC, has leveled upon our country. And again, with the expectation of what was to be realized at the CPO's office on Tuesday morning, and to no avail have had such any effect coming into being, it clearly sends a very, very, very poor signal.
On a personal note, how do you survive in your retirement? You know, I mean, it must be difficult sometimes.
It is. The challenges are very, very, very difficult. Thank God, because when simple as you go to the food stores, you spend approximately $3,000 a month, and yet that is insufficient, depending on the size of your family, man. And that is exclusive of your bills, your utility bills, etc.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, it's quite challenging, and you just have to trust in Almighty God that wonders would realize and bring fruition to its acceptance.
I know I spoke to a group of retirees when they usually come in and have their meetings, and something they pointed out to me that made total sense was the fact that if they could be exempted from paying certain bills, or at least if government could meet them halfway, when you look at WASA bills or TNTech bills, for instance, or even food card, if they could be given food cards.
Well, that would be basically, I believe personally, given the minimal pension in which are afforded public officers upon completion of their tenure of service, much more infrastructural services can be provided by the respective authorities to help offset and meet challenges where beset. Because you cannot ask, God forbid, you cannot ask a pensioner. Because when you look at someone, I'll draw this reference, which with no rejection, you have an old age pensioner who have arrived at the age of 65. He or she may not have contributed to the public sector.
Right.
Regarding its output. And in so doing, God bless that person to reach the required age for attainment. And yet you have that citizen attaining a higher and a much more lucrative personal package from the state than someone in whom have contributed wholeheartedly, quite committed, quite dedicated, and yet for all and sundry. Nothing is seeking to be addressed in that meaningful fashion. And as I heard the goodly president indicated in his political pursuits, upon being successful, one of the key issues in which he would be addressing would be that pension issue when he gets into parliament. And I would applaud him tremendously, and I trust God that the people out there, the electorate, pay attention to these critical issues in which are affecting our personal lives and treat with it in the manner most appropriate when that occasion arises.
How do you think retirees are treated on the whole in this country? Do you think that they even reap the benefits of their work?
Under no circumstances. It clearly defined based on the last post projections in which we realized. You know, it goes back, you know, when you leave, for instance, based on the period in which I've accumulated, period of service in which I've accumulated, and you have reached that retirement process, your benefits in which you have attained, it may sound large in number. But when you settle down and seek to put structures in place to carry out the facilitation that is required, it comes like casting pearls among swine. So the bottom line of it, pensioners are not being treated, or public service pensioners are not being treated equally, or needs to be treated much more fairly regarding the lives in which they have served, and served quite valiantly towards the best interests of well-being. Because even in my past, even before me, there are those who laid the foundation for us to come in. And what has happened? We have gone. What happened to the future generation? Is it only the parliamentarians, the magistrate, the judiciary and others gonna benefit? They have their role and responsibility to perform. They have their lucrative packages. But what about you and I? And these are the questions in which we need to ask ourselves, provide an analytical overview, and get off of that party truck and realize what is taking place with us in its generality.
There is a move by the government to increase retirement age to 65, up from 60. Your thoughts on that?
I can recall under the former administration, which was led by the Right Honorable Ms. Kamala Prasad-Bissessa, those projections were highlighted, and I think, if not mistaken, were brought to Parliament. And the very said political directorate
Objected
tremendously. Now, there is a lot of work. We have a lot of professionals out in our society today, you know, and there are many of us in whom, when you reach at that requirement, age of 60, you can still contribute. You still feel you can still contribute. So the onus of that responsibility would be borne upon the individual, him or herself, regarding his or her health status and the continuation and or contribution of which you could afford to the continuous development and betterment of your society and peoples of Trinidad and Tobago. So when this was projected under the former administration, I supported it. But I said the choice would be borne upon the individual.
So you're saying that the retirement age should be based on the individual.
Based on the individual. Because it's not something in which you can rush into.
Right.
As an individual, you must be aware, you must be knowledgeable of yourself. It is only you and God would know yourself than anyone else. So if as an individual that you know that you are physically afflicted with some mode of severe medical affliction, concern, it would be unwise of you when you reach at the required age to seek to continue thereafter, because we don't want a fellow brother or sister dropping down at his job site. And either instead of the ambulance or the morgue taking him there, although it's a journey in which we all have to pursue. But at the end of it all, the onus of that responsibility should be borne upon the individual's choice of determining the way forward. But my concern is, as long as such it should come into effect, there must not be deprivation of one's basic and fundamental rights as required within the working environment. Because you can't tell me because the requirement age is 60 and a bill has passed and I've decided to go on to 65, you mean to tell me that I can't entertain leave entitlement such as sick leave or casual leave, or there's a cut in my salary, under no circumstance. Because you're going to be tampering with my, defeating the purpose of my terms and conditions. It's not a new employee coming in, it's just a continuation of service. So thereafter, it remains wholly and solely upon the choice of the individual.
If I could just touch a little bit about your involvement with the PSA and your term in trade unionism. What has led you to be involved in trade unionism?
From a personal perspective, I always possess that human passion for each other. And getting into the working environment, where I started at the Trinidad Guardian several years back. From there, I took up employment up to my last point of establishment. I was able to realize and identify the need of each and every one. And there needs to be someone that must be able to take that mantle of responsibility in its exercising. As I would quote, and I use a biblical quotation from the 2nd book of Chronicles, righteousness exalts a nation. Sin is a reproach unto mankind. And for far too long, we have seen workers, and especially from the establishment in which I came in and from a general overview, continue to be vindicated and ostracized in the most uncaring and unloyal fashion. And we need as a body to stand up and to resist this evilous act in which continues to be demonstrated. One of the things that I can say that I am amicably proud of in my achievement as former chairman of the staff side at NCRHA, I was able to attain the respect from my employers because I was a no-nonsense person. If you know that you are coming to the table with any fancy dandy, and I put it a quote and unquote, I would not be entertaining it. We come to treat with an issues. The objective is seeking to find an amicable solution to issues in which affect the lives and well-being of each and every one that fulfill their daily responsibilities. So don't tell yourself because you are at a managerial level that you would come and sit on the table and seek to exercise an unrighteous mode and expect such to be accepted and accepted easily, under no circumstances. But I love, most importantly, as I would reiterate, I love serving the people, and having had the opportunity since President Comrade Watson Duke came into office, the mantle of authority in which he have invested within the lives and well-being of branch representatives leaves much to be determined. When I say leaves much to be determined, in its exercising of your responsibilities in care of representing your membership in the fashion most desirable. And to date, I still possess that keen passion to continue to serve, and to serve quite egoistically in the fashion that is desirable.
If you were to go back to your younger years to do one thing while you were staff chair for NCRHA, what would be that one thing?
I would seek to continue my pursuit in seeking to have workers' issues being addressed, and addressed quite vigorously at that institution, because they are quite foolhardy. I am not saying that it is that when the executive comes in, they meet you and treat with you.
Yeah.
But thereafter, what happens?
That's it.
They provide a camouflage. Because you have instances to date whereupon issues such as permanent appointments has been discussed even before I departed. Incremental allowances in which are outstanding for over 4 years are still outstanding. These are issues in which was discussed in my past. These are issues in which was discussed by the president, first and first vice president. And yet for all and sundry, you still continue to have a demonstration of gamesmanship. I had one policy for them, one solution. From the moment in time that you fail to meet the requirements of what is justifiably needed, I call upon you once, I call upon you twice, and I apply forceful action. I get the membership in specific areas, specific faculties, and the Baily tool from there. You need to send a very strong message to the labor force.
Do you think do you think perhaps that approach is needed a little more in terms of how we approach?
Well, in an effort for such an approach to be accomplished, and to be accomplished quite successfully, you need to separate, the member needs to separate themselves from the personality indifferences and seek to focus on a unitary status in which would identify the issues in which are affecting the personal well-being of each and every one, inclusive of myself, and what position must we take in an effort. Because if your union is standing 100% with you and fulfilling responsibilities on your behalf, and yet for all, the role and responsibility of the employer, one is to provide a healthy and safe working environment, to make sure that your employees are properly meted out with their correct dispensation of earnings. And when that is not being done, it leaves much, my beloved, to lead to ruin. And what it calls, therefore, it calls for unity within the body. And the body, and when I say the body of employees at the respective organizations in whom are affected and affected in a grief mode. Because if you do not come together and seek to blame the pillar post or to seek to blame the billboard, and does not look at yourself and or the issue in which is affecting me, and identifying the employer as the cancer that is not seeking to provide a remedy, then where do we go from here?
Bad business. In terms of safety for the employees at Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex. Now, a few weeks ago, I had on my show 2 members from NCRHA, and they mentioned to me that crime has taken a toll, and it affects them as well. When you look at things holistically, from your point of view, do you see it as anything that could possibly become better?
Specifically,
the fact that crime affects the workers at the various hospitals.
Oh yes, of course, because of the fact that, one, being a public institution, you have all mode of entities accessing service, and I have seen certain behavioral patterns being demonstrated by elements of our society at the institution, where I had to stand up as a representative on many occasions, approach it from an amicable perspective, and deal with it in an effort to protect the safety and well-being of the employees. And I draw a particular simple reference. There was one day, a CSR was attending to some patients, and this patient came up, seek to create an obstruction by posing a query. So she told him, could you wait a second? And with that, there was an outburst. And he reached thus far by indicating that, better spit in your face. With that said, I intervened. And in so doing, I said, if that is your behavioral pattern in which you choose to demonstrate, sir, this CSR would not be attending to you.
Yeah.
I called the supervisor, I informed the supervisor, and I said, look, if this behavioral pattern continues, find another source for this individual. And if it continues to be up, the security personnel came in, they treated with it, and it was able to be remedied. But we are faced with situations whereupon, now what also has to take into effect, it's very difficult to identify a respective source in terms of his or her misdemeanors, unless you come in through the agencies of national security.
Yeah.
Your communication skills play an important factor in your interrelating, because what you have to take into consideration is that you are an ambassador, regardless of the circumstances. It's not to telling you to stoop to conquer, but at the same time, you must be able to communicate. I'm not saying it is not being realized, but the employer needs to put proper measures in place in an effort to evade such from occurring. And unless that is not done, you will always find yourself running into challenges. Because I can even recall another incident whereupon one afternoon I was leaving to go home, and I met this individual, male, in an irate fashion. And I decided to stand up and speak to him. He didn't want to speak to me. He was highly emotional. when he settled himself, he eventually, when I inquired, his wife was inside, seriously ill. He sought permission from the security. He was there for the entire day. He sought permission from the security to take a bottle of water to his wife. And what the security officer informed him is that, "I tired to see you walk up and down." He said, "Well, my brother is my wife and is I alone here." He turned and informed him that my mother dead. You know what the goodly gentleman responded? He's going for a gun to come return with 2 bullets. One for him and one for himself. And I, thank God, I was able to create that piecemeal. But what I'm saying, I just use that as a referential guide. But the employer cannot await until the horse bolt from the stable and then to shut the door. You need to put proper infrastructure in place, in an effort to evade such unwarranted circumstances prevailing.
Oh my gosh. I've realized we've overstepped our time. Could I just ask you your closing comments before we wrap things up today?
But my closing comments in relation to our subject in which we have been discussing, I call on all our entire workforce of Trinidad and Tobago to stand together in unity, stand together in solidarity, and let us seek to defeat this system in which seeks to deprive us of our basic our fundamental rights as we are rightly deserving of.